Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name's Julie Crowley-Parmentier, and I'm a volunteer and board member of the Civic Alliance for a Cooler Rhode Island. I'll be your host and moderator for this event, so you want to be a climate leader. We're very glad that you're here. This is the second time the Civic Alliance for a Cooler Rhode Island, known as CACRI, has produced a candidates workshop before an election. The last time was in 2018. I'll talk more about CACRI in a few minutes, but first a few housekeeping tasks before we begin. First, we have technical support available for you. If you are struggling with Zoom and connecting to the workshop, please call our technical support line at 401-447-1560. Call anytime during this workshop. Second, I'll mute everyone's microphone once we begin. But if you want to ask questions, please type it into the chat box to the right of the screen. I will field all the questions and try to summarize them or put them together at the end for our presenters. If you are joining us via phone, you may have to wait until the end of the presentations to ask your questions. But near the end, we'll open up the mics and offer everyone here the chance to pose a question. So please remember not to make any statements during this time, but just pose your question. While this workshop is designed for candidates, we've invited campaign staff and members of the general public to sit in as well. Today, we're joined by nearly 50 different political campaigns from all over Rhode Island, from Woonsocket to Westerly, Burrillville to Barrington, Coventry to Providence. We have candidates who are running for the first time and some who are currently in the Rhode Island House and Senate, and many who are running for local offices from town council to school committee, town administrator, and many others positions. Since 2016, the Civic Alliance for a Cooler Rhode Island, CACRI, is a nonpartisan group of individuals from education, nonprofits, environmental, legislative, policy, and advocacy organizations, and general citizens that assesses and informs and activates efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in or attributable to Rhode Island. There are no paid staff. We are all volunteers. The purpose of CACRI is philanthropic and includes promoting social learning about climate change, especially the need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improving the Commonwealth, and protecting the environment and the functioning of the ecosystem. For more information about the Civic Alliance, you can go to livableri.org and learn about our reports, assessments, and projects that we have produced since our inception. One of our projects has been touring the state for the past few years. Our climate crisis poster campaign is based on the World War I and II poster campaigns to get folks on both sides of the Atlantic to help out in the war efforts. In this case, climate change is the battle we are fighting. 25 posters tour the state in church halls, civic organizations, municipal buildings, and libraries. Go to livableri.org to learn how the poster campaign can come to your neighborhood. Also on our website is our recent assessment of the EC4, the Rhode Island Executive Climate Change Coordinating Council, the one state group responsible for coordinating statewide efforts on the climate crisis. CACRI's president, Ken Payne, a presenter here, will talk more about the EC4 a little later. Funded entirely by members of CACRI, this 24-page report titled Insufficient illustrates in detail the failings of the EC4 in the state's climate crisis responsibility. Over 175 hard copies of the report were mailed to state department heads and legislators in the Rhode Island House and Senate. You can view and download your own copy by going to livableri.org. The presenters here today are making themselves available to you as candidates and to your staff if you need help with the latest on the state's response to the climate crisis. Send us a note at riclimateleader@gmail.com. We will get back to you with information you can use both now and once you get elected. Our agenda for today is as follows. We will have three presenters: Timmons Roberts from Brown University, Ken Payne, the president of CACRI, and Kai Salem, a local climate advocate. Presentations will be followed by questions from the audience, and finally, panelists will be given a few minutes for final comments. Our first presenter is Timmons Roberts from Brown University. Timmons will talk about Rhode Island's vulnerability to climate change and its opportunity for structural transformation and job creation. Please welcome Timmons Roberts. Thank you. Over to you, Timmons.
Okay, thank you, Julie. I really appreciate it. I'm setting my timer. I'm gonna be as succinct as I can, and as you can sort of tell by the title of my talk here, that's a lot of ground to cover. And I just want to express my appreciation for people coming this morning. We think there's a lot of important things that people can know and should know about what's going on in our state as our climate changes. So I'm gonna serve the role as sort of a professor type and not try to be too professorial. So next slide, please. Okay, so people mostly know about the greenhouse effect. There is a natural greenhouse effect that keeps our climate livable on Earth, but it involves a certain amount of these gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxides that basically allow the sun to come in, but then keep the heat from, all the heat from bouncing back out into space. So if you can think about a night that's perfectly clear is much cooler night than when there's clouds. Well, these are sort of like gases clouds that you can't see. That is, these layers are getting thicker of these gases as we pump fossil fuels and coal and dig coal out of the ground and then burn it and basically pump it into the atmosphere. And what we've done is very measurable. At Mauna Loa volcano, an old volcano out in Hawaii, they've been collecting air samples since the 1950s, and we can go back much further with ice core bubbles, and we can see that typically, the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere varied between about 200 and 250 parts per million. But now it's just skyrocketed since we started burning all this fossil fuel. And it's now, a couple of weeks ago, at 416 parts per million. You can see at the very right of the graph there. Next slide. So this has manifested already in Rhode Island. It's not a thing in the future. Climate change is happening already. So we did a little analysis with Melissa Elliott, a doctoral student at the School of Public Health at Brown, did the work of counting how many days we have over 80, 90, and 100 degrees heat index in Rhode Island. And this was at TF Green Airport. And when I was growing up in the 60s, it was about 50 or 55 days a year that were, over 80 degrees heat index. And now we're, in the latest count up about 82. I think I don't know where we are this year, but I'm sure it's one of the largest numbers ever. So we have many more hot summer days. Our winters are getting milder. There certainly are still cold snaps, but it's getting much milder. And the prediction is if global warming continues at some of the high rates that are expected, we could end up in coastal Georgia, or in fact, southern Florida in terms of the types of summers we have experienced. The figure on the bottom left there shows that, in fact, the heat is not experienced equally, that people in neighborhoods with no trees and a lot of asphalt and black rooftops are experiencing much hotter situations. So those are the Valley neighborhoods, South Providence, Pawtucket, and Central Falls. And then the people who are out in the suburbs or in parts of town with a lot of trees and water have a much cooler experience. And this is from a heat wave around noon of July 10th of 2009 from a Landsat satellite. Next. So the reason why these numbers that I was showing about number of days over 80 degrees matter is because that's precisely when the number of people showing up at the emergency room with cardiovascular and pulmonary ailments, it starts to soar. So there's all kinds of health risks. Asthma rates go up. The pollution from our cars and so on is much more dangerous when there's heat waves. And it just stresses the human body. There's much more to talk about there, but for the sake of time, I would just refer people to a report from the Rhode Island Department of Health about climate change and health, which is quite excellent. But the heat also can actually stress our physical infrastructure, our roads, our railroads, our power plants and so on, the electric wires, everything gets really stressed during times when it's extremely hot. The electricity demand soars. We have these peak loads, which Salem will talk about, I think, a little bit later, but the demand soars and the supply can be at risk. For example, nuclear plants need to be cooled with water, and if the water gets too hot, you can't cool it, which has happened, for example, in France during some of their heat waves. Work productivity drops. The risk of people working outdoors really increases. Species shift, and there's local extinction of species, and all kinds of things happen, for example, for fishing and other ways that we interact with species. Next slide. The sea level is rising already in Rhode Island, and the rate of increase is starting to tick up. It's already up about 9 inches since the 1930s at the Newport tide gauge. I mean, this is not very disputable. I mean, it's just basically a yardstick attached to the pier at the Naval Station. And the predictions are that it's going to increase a lot more. There's a debate about which of these projections is the right one. I don't, pretend to know exactly where we're going, but we could be looking at 3 to 5 feet or more of sea level rise by the end of the century. And even by mid-century, we're looking at 2 to 3 feet. And if 9 or 10 inches is already wiping out some of our best beaches and threatening our historic properties in Newport, for example, and other of our historic towns on the water, we're in for trouble. And Rhode Island has 400 miles of coastline. Next, a little bit more about, on the next slide, about what are some of the impacts of rising sea level. This is Joe Carpenter's beach. Of course, there's coastal properties, which are worth billions of dollars in the state. And in fact, in some of our towns and cities, municipalities, the front line of houses are the most valuable ones because they, of course, have the ocean view or the coastal view, the bay view. And some of them are a quarter of all the property taxes in that municipality are from that one single row of homes. So it's extremely risky. We also have our ports, transportation, wastewater treatment facilities right on the water in cases of wastewater treatment, because they need to be as low as possible to use gravity to let the stormwater and sewage flow downhill. There's saltwater contamination of drinking water. That's real risk at Newport, for example, with some of those ponds that are just behind the beaches. We have the species losses I mentioned, and then these economic losses from tourism, real estate, and commercial sectors. Much more to talk about, but I'm just giving you the idea of why we should care about climate change. Next. I want to save a few minutes for what are we doing in the state. I mean, Rhode Island likes to think of itself as a leader on climate change. This figure shows that, in fact, in terms of how much of our electricity generation is happening from renewable sources, we are 5th worst in the country. So we are using some, imported hydroelectricity, especially from Canada. We have some nuclear power and so on. But in terms of actual zero carbon sources, we're quite low. That's why I put the big red arrow there. We could be doing much, much better. Next. Here's one reason why we should be a climate leader. First of all, we have no fossil fuel production in the state. We don't have natural gas production. We don't, drill for oil or dig coal. As a result, we're spending, this is the amount of money spent in millions. So this is $4 billion a year, roughly, that we're spending every year on fossil fuels. And that's, that's just money that pours out of our economy and creates very few jobs here. If we were producing our own energy, we'd be doing much better. We're, of course, as I said, we're vulnerable. We have 400 miles of coastline, and there is strong public concern in the state. We also have a Democratic-led legislature and a Democratic governor, which this isn't a nonpartisan event, but the fact is in the United States, the Republican Party has largely taken a climate-denying position in its official platforms. And fortunately, we have not had to deal with that so much. Next slide is great. And there's plenty of other reasons why the state should be a leader. If we're wondering why the state is not doing better, other states like Massachusetts and Connecticut passed something called the Global Warming Solutions Act in 2008. Rhode Island did not. We do not have binding targets on our emissions. Kai will talk more about that, but we did a small study collecting all of the testimony from about 6 years of legislative sessions at the State House. And we saw who's testifying against climate action. And here's the list here. The point being that most of them are reflections of the fossil fuel industry. They come with Rhode Island titles or ocean state in their names, but they are largely representing what I would say are not their private interests, and they're not representing the public interests. Next. We did a study last year with the Stockholm Environment Institute, looking at how much better could the state do if we got serious about climate change. Could we basically wring out all or nearly all of our emissions? Kai will talk more about this, but I just wanted to point out that our modeling showed that if we did a quick ramp up of especially offshore wind, we could be shifting our gasoline cars to electric vehicles and our houses from oil and natural gas furnaces to air source heat pumps and other electric heating. And to do that, we'd need to double our electricity supply. And this shows that we could do that. We could phase out natural gas in just 10 years if we got very serious and ramp up this offshore wind. Of course, we'd be hooked into a grid, which would include many sources and other places. We also would probably need some storage and things like that, but it is possible to wring out about 80% of our emissions. Next slide. I think I am about done. I'm happy to talk about that more. We just finished a series of reviews of policies and programs in the different states across the region of New England. They're about to be released in the site on our site of my Climate and Development Lab at Brown University. But we did a review of the policies in Rhode Island, and we can provide that for candidates because that's exactly what it was conducted for. And this is a broad-ranging set of policies and includes clean energy. Next. I'm done. Thank you. And again, thanks everybody for coming, and I look forward to questions.
Thanks, Timmons. Again, if you have questions for Timmons, you can save them till the end of the presentation or just type them into the chat box to the right of the screen. Our next presenter is Ken Payne, the former director of the Senate Policy Office, the former Office of Energy Resources Director, and the current president of the Civic Alliance for a Cooler Rhode Island. Ken will speak on the CACRI assessment of the EC4, titled Insufficient, and state structures related to climate change. Please welcome Ken Payne.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Timmons, for that thoughtful recitation of the challenges we face. And thank you, Julie, for the kind introduction. The EC4 analysis, insufficient, was a very close read of how things are done or not done in Rhode Island. In a way, it was a window on looking at what's happening in our policy world. In policy, things get done through politics. And that's the process of turning understanding into action. Politics take place in time. Laws are typically known by the year of their enactment. And this data reveals that the system that we now have was not designed to address the problems we now face. Next. To be enforceable, policies are written. Policies address two questions: what's happening and what we should do about it. Policy reflects the scientific and normative understanding at a point in time. This presentation, like policy, is presented with slides that contain words, not images. Next. The major climate change policies effective now in Rhode Island are to be found in the Department of Environmental Management, the Office of Energy Resources, Energy Resources Law, Energy Efficiency Law, the Executive Climate Change Coordinating Council, and very interestingly, Local Comprehensive Planning and Zoning. Next. DEM, our mothership of environmental responsibilities, was created in 1977. It was a combination of natural resource functions like agriculture, forestry, parks and recreation, beaches, with all the environmental enactments at the federal level in the 1970s, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, etc. So it brought all those together in 1977, and it hasn't been comprehensively amended since. In other words, we're living with a 1977 era version of environmental management that predates the concepts of biodiversity, sustainability, ecosystem services, and ecosystem-based management. Next. OER, Office of Energy Resources. The Governor's Energy Office was created by Governor Noel during the 1970s oil embargo. And it existed only in executive orders for more than 30 years. It was the largest single source of executive orders during that entire historic span. And in 2006, after the greenhouse gas stakeholder process, the Senate leadership said, we're having enough of an agency that doesn't have a statute. And it decided that it would make the move to create OER. That legislation, and I want this to be noted by the people who are running for General Assembly, was supported by the chair. Its lead sponsor was the chairman of the Corporations Committee. Its second sponsor was the chairperson of the Environment Ag Committee. Its third prime co-sponsor was the Senate President. Its fourth prime co-sponsor was the Senate Majority Leader. And its fifth prime co-sponsor was the chairperson of the Senate Committee on Government Oversight. Wow! It was loaded with power. So there were lots of bills in 2006 pertaining to renewable energy, energy efficiency, all sorts of things. And there were at least half a dozen in the Senate and 5 in the House. And the question was what to do with them. And so the chair of the Senate Corporations Committee was designated as a negotiator with the House. I was his staff support, and we went over to see the House Majority Leader. And we met with him right as the session was reaching its final weeks of activity. And we presented the whole picture. And we said to him, well, here's the way we can amend this bill. Here's the way that we amend that bill. And he says, I'm tired and I'm grumpy. And I said, well, we should all do it as a consolidated bill. He said, we can. I said, yes, we can do that. And he said, well, that's what I want. 83-page bill that integrated what all the members wanted. What that shows is that sometimes you start with lots of little stuff and then you build it up into a massive bill that makes a platform kind of change. And it was enacted in 2006. Next. And some of the things that it contains are things pertaining to renewable energy. Interestingly, they're under the public utilities title of the general laws, not under the environmental title, which is 4217.1 chapter. So it's really about creating a new sector on renewable energy, modest as though it is, but it has a renewable energy standard, net metering, long-term contracting, and distributed generation. You see those dates. Next. Electricity and natural gas efficiency. This is our big success story. There was a systems benefit charge in 1990, made statutory in 96. And then we said we have to get really serious about energy efficiency. Let's adopt least cost procurement, which is simply you buy all energy efficiency measures that are cheaper over time than buy and supply. That means it's open-ended. It's only that principle. And it's done on 3-year cycles. This is now the top utility-ranked, utility-based energy efficiency program in the US. So here we're on the top of the heap. The result is between renewable energy and this program, which is the larger of the two, we now have 16,000 people in Rhode Island employed in clean energy. That is an amount 25% larger than the size of state government, which is about 12,000 employees. Next. The EC4, New England Governors and Eastern Canadian Premiers Action Plan of 2001 were one piece of it, and an executive order by Governor Lincoln Chafin. And its function is to assess, integrate, and coordinate state actions pertaining to climate change, and it establishes targets, but not binding ones, for emissions reduction. It's and statutorily adopted executive order. Very weird, because that, that's unlike what we did in 2006. The EC4 is an add-on to existing state agency duties. It doesn't have state funding. So this is really a weakness. But the most significant thing is it was based on something in 2001. 1 year later, we had the Paris Agreement with the goal of staying below 2%, 2 degrees Celsius, and hopefully get down to 1.5 degrees Celsius in terms of global warming. That was a game changer. And so the EC4's underlying statute was dated, significantly dated, within a year after its adoption. Next slide. Local planning and zoning. Wow. Think of it this way. For most households, their primary financial asset is the value of their home. And where we live and all those sorts of things really are a function of local planning and zoning. That's governing. So revitalization of what's happening locally is tremendously important. It can help vehicle miles traveled. Think of COVID-19 and people staying at home. That cleaned up the air. What we need to do is think of that as an immediate target to address the primary source of greenhouse gas emissions in our state. Next slide. So here is what our situation is, and I don't need to read it. Here's what it is. Things have changed in the last few years. The time has come, next slide, to change what we're doing. We should base and update policy and programs using current scientific consensus, assess, integrate, and coordinate our efforts to keep our systems vibrant, and recognize it in Rhode Island, across the board, diversity is successfully accomplished locally. It happens by place, community by community. And we should say, okay, as our forebears made changes that were responsive to the conditions of their time, we need to make changes that are responsive to the conditions of our time. We cannot revert to the old business as usual model. It puts us on a pathway to extinction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Our last presenter for today is Kai Salem, an advocate for climate and clean energy groups and coalitions in the state. Kai will talk on current legislation before the Rhode Island State Legislature and what candidates can do to advance the issues and gain support. Please welcome Kai Salem.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thank you to Julie and Kakri for hosting us today. My name is Kai Salem. I have my contact information here. I am the policy coordinator at Green Energy Consumers Alliance, which is a local nonprofit. We work in Massachusetts and Rhode Island to reduce carbon emissions through policy and green energy programs. I'm also the Vice President of Policy for the Environment Council of Rhode Island, and I facilitate the state's Climate Crisis Campaign, which is a project of the Environment Council of Rhode Island. I'm not here representing any of those organizations, but that is a taste of where I draw my knowledge on climate policy in the state from. So we'll go to the next slide. I want to especially talk about the Environment Council of Rhode Island, which is an umbrella network of advocates in the state who work on climate issues. I'm really excited that a lot of people on this call are considering seeking public office, and advocates are here to help you. We work with legislators and city council members as well. Green Energy Consumers does some municipal advocacy to develop strong policy that can move the state forward on climate change. We also host lobbying days, we host our annual legislative coffee hour, and we help mobilize the state's interested climate advocates, just public advocates, to get to the State House and help get good climate policy passed. So Julie, will you press play on this short video from this past year's Environment Council of Rhode Island Coffee Hour?
Rhode Island has already experienced more warming than any other of the 48 lower United States. We had the warmest decade on record. Farmers and fishers can attest to the weird weather patterns that are disrupting our traditional lifestyles and economies, and our 400 miles of coastline are threatened by rising sea levels. And yet, no noteworthy environment, climate, or energy bills have passed the General Assembly over the last 2 years. We need to take action in 2020.
So that is the environment in which we are working as climate advocates and as our climate champions in the State House. No energy or environment or climate legislation have passed over the next couple of years. That same day, that was January 15th, many of the advocates who were in the room and the legislators promptly went over to a Boston Globe event at District Hall, where Dan McGowan, who's there on the left, interviewed the Senate President, President Ruggiero, and the Speaker of the House, Nicholas Mattiello, so two of the most powerful people in Rhode Island politics. One of the questions was about climate change, and Speaker Mattiello's response was that there is nothing that Rhode Island can do to address climate change in a way that is real or impactful. All you can do is harm your economy and not improve your climate unless the entire nation joins in. We on this call know that he is wrong. The speaker did try to roll the statement back a little bit, but that is really exemplifies the attitude of General Assembly leadership to generalize. I don't want to generalize too hard, but I think that that is the barrier that we are facing in our General Assembly. It can be an uphill battle to pass climate legislation. But if we go to the next slide, we know that good climate policy does not mean that we can't have jobs or that we can't have a good economy. We have a new energy vision for Rhode Island, which means that all Rhode Islanders have equitable access to clean, affordable energy. We'll get the next one, Julie. That electricity, heating, and transportation systems, those are the three major components of our energy systems, are reliable and completely carbon-free, or at least net zero by 2050. and that this robust clean energy economy provides equitable employment opportunities for Rhode Islanders. Ken previously mentioned that our energy efficiency economy is driving employment for thousands and thousands of workers across the state. Clean energy creates jobs. Go to the next slide. So the energy transition challenge is daunting but doable. Along the bottom of this slide, we have the major sources of emissions in our economy, as well as how much emissions comes from each. It's a little bit of a confusing slide. This comes from the Department of Environmental Management, because as an environmental advocate, I tend to think of residential heating, commercial heating, and industrial heating, as well as natural gas distribution as all part of one broader heating sector, which is actually the second biggest source of emissions in the state, ahead of electricity. So we have transportation about 36%, electricity at 25%, and heating creates another third of our emissions. Natural gas distribution is actually a much bigger source of emissions than is on this slide, because gas leaks are way underestimated. But we do have strategies to reduce emissions from all of these sectors. If we go on to the next slide, we can talk about some of those. We have a suite of energy policy for net zero by 2050. I think that Ken went over a lot of the different policies that are already in place in the state to address emissions. And I think it's good to think about our existing policy. What Rhode Island needs to think about doing in the next few years on climate, when we need to act as soon as possible on the climate crisis, is to strengthen and double down and extend the energy efficiency policy strategies that are tried and true in our state. One major exception is that we're one of the few states in the region that does not have mandatory emissions targets. The Act on Climate bill, which has been proposed for the last couple of years, would establish 2030 and 2050 emissions targets to keep our government accountable to doing the climate action that we want to see. Many of you might recall that back in January, the governor passed the 100% renewable electricity executive order. That executive order is really exciting. It was talked about as Rhode Island becoming a leader on climate. The bad news is that all that executive order did was to start a planning process to consider how we might get to 100% renewable electricity by 2030. But we already know the policies that we need to get there. The Renewable Energy Standard is a policy that mandates a rising percentage of our energy, our electricity that is bought by utility companies to come from renewable sources. Earlier, Timmons mentioned that natural gas is the dominant fuel of electricity that is produced in Rhode Island. But at Green Energy Consumers Alliance, we think about emissions as what we're actually consuming in the state. Rhode Island buys its energy, Rhode Island utilities buy electricity from a lot of solar projects in the region and wind projects, as well as nuclear. And these are some of the mix of sources that are feeding into the Rhode Island electricity grid. Getting to 100% renewable electricity by 2030 is doable if we procure offshore wind and reinvest in our solar incentive programs. Ken also mentioned the importance of energy efficiency in the state. We need to strengthen energy efficiency by extending the statute that Ken described earlier, which is the most really an incredible piece of policy, one of my personal favorites, as well as passing efficiency codes and standards. Finally, on the transportation sector, which is our biggest source of emissions, we need to electrify our transportation. Gasoline and diesel fuel will never be low carbon, but electricity can make our vehicles run on solar and wind. And to do so, we need to create funding sources for charging and electric vehicle incentives. And the other pieces of transportation infrastructure, in particular, clean, affordable, accessible public transit, they will get us to a place of decarbonizing the transportation sector. The Transportation and Climate Initiative is a regional agreement between states from Virginia to Maine, although not all of the governors of these states are varyingly committed to the Transportation and Climate Initiative. Governor Raimondo has repeatedly committed Rhode Island to the Transportation and Climate Initiative, but we need General Assembly approval to join this regional compact to discourage fossil fuel transportation and fund clean transportation. So we'd like to see the General Assembly pass this in 2021. There are so many other great policies that can help with climate action and decarbonization. But these are a few of my favorites and what I would like to see in the near future, things that are doable and can get us to the foundation for a net zero by 2050. On the next slide, I think I'd go through some of the sectors in more detail, but as we are running short on time, we can skip through these pretty quickly. So I think I mentioned most of these policies already, but the most important policies to reduce emissions from the transportation sector are things that support electrification. Currently, Rhode Island's rebate fund for electric cars has been empty since 2017, I believe, which is longer now than it existed in the first place. We need to refill that rebate fund, as well as improving public transit and passing the Transportation and Climate Initiative, which I already mentioned. Again, I think I mentioned these policies already, but energy efficiency is the baseline for improving the decarbonization of our electric sector. Electricity only produces 25% of the state's emissions, which is low in part because of how much good energy efficiency work the state has already done. But this sector will become increasingly important as we electrify our transportation and heating sectors. Heating and cooling is one of the most challenging sectors. Rhode Island released the Heating Sector Transformation Report in April 2020. That report really revealed how there is not a clear path ahead on heating right now. So the most important first baseline steps for decarbonizing our heating sector is to invest as much as possible in efficiency through our efficiency programs, building codes, and building standards. As I mentioned around the climate crisis campaign earlier, a key part of getting climate policy passed in the state is getting Rhode Islanders to the State House, or in a time of pandemic, really engaged over the phone and by email with our legislators. About a year ago, a lot of legislators, our climate champions in the State House, as well as climate advocates, were really frustrated that an energy and environment policy was not passing. So we started the climate crisis campaign to galvanize statewide support around good climate policy. We have gotten signatories from all around the state and some unexpected allies like the Catholic Diocese. And you on the call can join the campaign or sign on at riclimatecrisis.org. And that climate crisis campaign will be reinvigorated as the next legislative session approaches to support all this good policy. Here are some of the resources. Environment Council of Rhode Island is a really, really great resource for any legislator who is looking to work on environmental issues. You can be connected with the state's foremost environmental policy experts on all sorts of different issues. You can learn more about our legislative agenda. Similarly, the Rhode Island Climate Crisis campaign, which is at riclimatecrisis.org, can help you connect with an organization all around mobilizing support on climate action. And that's everything I have, but my contact information is there with more questions later as well.
Thank you, Kai. Before we move on to questions, I just wanted to let you know that CACRI will hold another session for candidates on September 24th, 2020, starting at 7 p.m. This will be very similar to today's presentation. If you and your staff want to attend, please go to Eventbrite and look for So You Want to Be a Climate Leader workshop. Register there and we will send you Zoom connection information. Now on to our questions. We'll take a few from the chat box. I can see that.
I think I responded to Martin's, and it sort of addressed a bit of Susan Kelly's question about nuclear power. We're just, in the modeling we did, we left on the existing nuclear power plants. Of course, Rhode Island doesn't have any. Our nearest one's over in Connecticut, not far from the border. But there are a few left in New England, and they're a big part of our power. And if we turn them off too quickly, we're going to have to bring on some dirty oil plants, mostly that are in the wings, and more natural gas. So it's kind of a step backwards. So until we have more renewables online, they're very helpful for the transition. And I do not propose building new ones. It's just very unlikely to me that that's going to be feasible. That the citizens of New England are going to allow a new nuclear plant in their neighborhood. And they cost so much and they take so long to site. Whereas, I mean, offshore wind can be put up in 2 years, and the same with solar. They're just much faster. I think I want to turn it to Kai and to Ken on talking about what local local governments can do. I mean, I would just say there are, of course, city fleets of vehicles that can be electrified. There are city facilities that could be, have solar on the rooftops or on, landfills. But then I think there's also the possibility, as Providence has done, of setting a target of, 100% carbon-free energy by 2050 or 2040. But then also developing shorter-term targets and plans to get there. So, Kai, Ken, you guys want to reflect on that?
I'll say I totally agree with Timmons about nuclear. We see it as an important connection between where we are now and a future where we can be 100% renewable energy. If we were to take all of our nuclear online right now or offline, it would be a much dirtier grid, but no one's really talking about building new nuclear. As far as local action, especially on the town level, there's two major things that towns are doing right now. In addition to, plastic bag ordinances and tree planting programs, all of the incredible sustainability things that can be done on a local level, a lot of towns in Rhode Island are starting community choice electricity aggregation, which is a program where a town buys electricity in bulk on behalf of its residents. With the buying power of the entire community, towns are able to negotiate cheaper electricity prices for their residents than is available through National Grid or any of the competitive suppliers. This electricity can also be greener. Central Falls and Providence, I believe, have their community choice electricity aggregations before the Public Utilities Commission. Portsmouth just passed a resolution to start the municipal aggregation process on Tuesday evening, I believe. And these default electricity plans are 10% to 25% more renewable energy, more renewable electricity than is required by state law. So that's a really awesome way to get cheap renewable electricity to everyone in a town all at once. So if your town is not already doing that, you could either as a municipal leader sponsor that as a resolution, or you could, as a resident in that town, work with your municipal leaders to do so. Green Energy Consumers has a ton of information about that on our website. You could also pass a resolution endorsing the climate crisis campaign like Providence did. There are different ways to be involved in state climate policy as a town through passing resolutions. So just two ideas I have about how municipalities can get involved.
I'm very pleased with what Kai has shared with you. And now I'm going to share with you my own fascination about what can be done locally. Sometimes a few words make a great deal of difference. And there is a provision in the Planning Enabling Act, Local Comprehensive Planning Enabling Act, that says you should have a planning element in your comp plan dealing with natural hazards. Well, some of those natural hazards are droughts, floods, and other things that are in fact exacerbated by climate change. Climate change isn't specifically referenced, but if it were, which you could do very logically as at the local level by ordinance, then you could make land use planning decisions based on their implications regarding climate change. That would be an enormous breakthrough. And even the UN stuff recognizes that land use is a big driver of climate change and that local activity is an important response to climate change. So let's look at something as fundamental as local planning and zoning as a tool. As I observed, you can work from home under local zoning, under home occupations definition in the Zoning Enabling Act. There's a lot of scuttlebutt right now that the response to COVID-19 was a game changer because it showed the feasibility of working at home. And for many people, that could be a game changer. And actually, it's something that's doable under zoning. Another one that I think is a favorite of mine is that plant agriculture is an allowable use in all zoning districts in Rhode Island. In other words, wherever you live or wherever there's any zoning, you can do plant agriculture there. One of the major issues recognized globally in addressing climate change is what to do about agriculture. And one of the things that we can do is expand it in Rhode Island, because there is no barrier in terms of where it can grow. It can grow in any zoning district. When I shared that provision of law, which was 2011, 2012, with Land for Good and their chief legal counsel, her reaction, Chris Paulson's reaction, was, wow, this is special. It's nowhere else in New England. So here we have a really vibrant thing that could address food issues, which are not a big source of emissions in Rhode Island, but the individual greenhouse gas footprint, they are a big issue. And that's something we can take much more ownership with, actually using a tool that's already in place in local zoning. So that there's stuff out there that I think with some calibration and use, which is the policy side of it, could be made very, very useful to Rhode Islanders in doing what they can do to address climate change. That's what I want to observe. The local government level could be one of the most vibrant players of all.
Thank you, Ken. Are there any other questions at this time? We're running close to the end of our time. If you have a question, use the little, and just have your name up here, use the little question icon. Otherwise, if we do not have any more questions, then I'd like to thank our speakers very much. And also just wanted to let you know that this session has been recorded, and you can get a copy of it, download a copy of it on Livable Rhode Island, just to say livablerhodeisland.org website. All right, so my name, I just wanted to say thank you in particular to Kai Salem, Ken Payne, Timmons Roberts, and congratulations to all of you. Good luck to all of you. You are now officially on your way to becoming climate leaders. I hope you will join us again in September. Thank you. Bye.